Ethan sat in the quiet corner of a small-town cafe, typing aimlessly on his laptop. The sound of rain tapping the windows filled the silence. He wasn't waiting for anyone, or at least that's what he told himself. The bell above the cafe door chimed. A woman in her early 40s stepped in, confident, elegant, yet with eyes that carried quiet fatigue. She searched for a seat and noticed the only empty one near Ethan. She asked softly, "Mind if I sit here?" Ethan nodded with a polite smile. For a while, they both stayed silent, two strangers sharing a table but separate worlds. Her phone buzzed. She sighed. Work never ends. Ethan smiled. Maybe it's a sign to take a break. She laughed, a light, genuine laugh that instantly changed the air between them. They talked about random things, books, travel, coffee. But Ethan noticed how she avoided talking about her husband. Every pause carried something unsaid. When Ethan complimented her smile, she hesitated. "You're kind." It's been a long time since someone said that. Her eyes looked down, voice breaking slightly. She mentioned her teenage kids, her demanding job, her husband's late nights. "We talk less these days. Mostly about bills." The pain in her tone wasn't loud. It was quiet, tired. Ethan didn't flirt. He simply listened, truly listened, something she clearly wasn't used to. Her shoulders relaxed, her smile softened. For a moment, she looked alive again. Hours passed without them noticing. The cafe emptied around them. Outside, the rain had stopped, but neither of them wanted to leave just yet. Their eyes met in silence, the kind that said everything words couldn't. She smiled again, this time softly, with both warmth and guilt. As she left, she turned back for a second. "It was nice talking to you, Ethan." He watched her walk away, unsure why that moment felt heavier than it should have. Ethan sat there long after she'd gone, staring at her empty cup. He didn't know it yet, but that smile, that brief, human connection, was about to change everything. A few days later, Ethan received a simple text from her. "Thanks for the conversation that day. It meant more than you think." He stared at it for a long time before replying, "Anytime." Weeks turned into months. Ethan met more women, through work, friends, coincidences. Different lives, same quiet loneliness behind their smiles. One was a sharp, confident woman named Karen, successful, respected, always in control at work. But one evening, her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "At home, I'm invisible." Another, Lydia, a math professor, laughed loudly during class but confessed quietly over coffee, "I can solve problems, but not my marriage." A nurse named Alicia said, "I take care of everyone, but no one takes care of me." Her voice cracked, a line rehearsed too many times in silence. Each woman told a version of the same story, a husband too busy, a home too cold, a heart too quiet. Ethan started to realize they weren't looking for romance. They were looking for recognition. What began as small talk became deeper, confessions, secrets, tears. They found comfort in his attention. He found fascination in their honesty. After every encounter, Ethan told himself he was just helping listening. But late at night, when silence filled his apartment, he felt something missing, a guilt he couldn't name. Why him? Why did they choose him, an average young man with no money, no status? The answer came quietly one night because he listened. Their eyes met in silence, the kind that said everything words couldn't. She smiled again, this time softly, with both warmth and guilt. Months later, another woman. Another story. Another night where boundaries blurred between empathy and temptation. Ethan sat there long after she'd gone, staring at her empty cup. He didn't know it yet, but that smile, that brief, human connection, was about to change everything. "Thank you." Perfect smile. But behind all that confidence was exhaustion. She had built her life around keeping everything fine. Her days were full of presentations and calls. Everyone needed her, clients, staff, her boss, but at home, no one asked how she was doing. When she entered her house that night, her husband didn't look up from the TV. "Dinner?" he asked, eyes still on the screen. "Already ordered," she replied quietly. They ate in near silence. She tried to talk about her day, but he only nodded. She smiled politely. It was easier than explaining the ache she felt. Later, in bed, he fell asleep instantly. Karen stared at the ceiling, eyes open in the dark. She turned toward him, but his back faced her like always. Days later, she met Ethan again. A casual coffee by coincidence. His easy warmth disarmed her. When he asked, "Rough week," she exhaled. Every week. She talked, really talked for the first time in months. About her husband's indifference, her fading marriage, the emptiness she carried. Ethan just listened. Tears filled her eyes. "You know what hurts most?" she whispered. "No one even notices when I'm sad anymore." Ethan reached across the table. Not to flirt, but to comfort. That touch lasted a second too long. Neither pulled away. It wasn't lust, it was relief. For one fleeting moment, she felt seen again. Driving home that night, Karen couldn't shake the feeling of guilt, but also, strangely, hope. Her heart felt alive for the first time in years. She wanted to tell her husband everything, how lonely she felt, how close she was to breaking. But when she saw him asleep on the couch, she said nothing. Ethan sat there long after she'd gone, staring at her empty cup. He didn't know it yet, but that smile, that brief, human connection, was about to change everything. Lydia was known at the university for her sharp mind and calm presence. Students admired her brilliance, equations bent to her will. But her own life felt unsolved. She taught differential equations that day, but her words echoed in her mind, hollow. The class applauded. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Back home, she placed her bag on a table where an old wedding photo stood. She stared at it. The woman smiling in that frame looked like a stranger now. Her husband, Mark, sat on the couch reading the newspaper. "How was your day?" she asked. "Same as always," he replied without looking up. The silence that followed was heavier than words. Lydia couldn't remember the last time Mark told her she looked beautiful. She still tried new dresses, a touch of perfume, but he never noticed. One afternoon, Ethan met her at a cafe near campus. He recognized her from a seminar and invited her to join him. She hesitated, then smiled politely. Their talk began with math, but somehow turned personal. Lydia confessed, "I can calculate everything except how love disappears." Ethan listened, truly listened. As they laughed, Lydia felt something she hadn't in years, attention. Her cheeks flushed, her laughter felt real. For once, she wasn't invisible. Before leaving, she said softly, "You remind me of who I used to be, before life got quiet." Ethan didn't respond, just smiled gently. That evening, Lydia sat in bed reading. Mark entered, said nothing, turned off the light, and slept. She stared at the ceiling, realizing how alone she truly was. In the bathroom mirror, she whispered to herself, "I'm still here." For the first time, she saw the beauty she had forgotten to see, the one her husband no longer noticed. Days later, Lydia walked past Ethan on campus. Their eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgement of something they both understood. She smiled faintly and kept walking. Lydia moved through her house like a ghost, folding laundry, cooking dinner, cleaning up toys. Her life was a routine of quiet service. Her husband, David, had a temper that came without warning. "Didn't I tell you to pay that bill?" he snapped that night. She whispered, "I did." He just grunted and walked away. When arguments ended, silence filled the house like fog. The children tiptoed around their father. Monica smiled for them, but inside, she felt hollow. One afternoon, after school drop-off, she sat in a cafe alone for the first time in months. No noise. No shouting, just peace, and a stranger's voice saying, "You look like you need a break." Ethan talked kindly, without judgment. Monica found herself telling him about her children, her fears, her exhaustion. "I'm so tired of pretending everything's fine," she confessed softly. When she spoke about David's temper, her hands shook. "He's not bad," she said, forcing a smile. "He's just angry a lot." Ethan didn't interrupt. He just let her breathe. They laughed about small things, music, food, the chaos of parenting. For a brief moment, she felt like the girl she used to be before fear became her routine. Her phone buzzed. "Where are you?" David's harsh voice filled her ear. "Just running errands," she lied. Her hand trembled as she hung up. On the way home, her laughter disappeared. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, her mind racing with guilt, fear, and longing for calm. That night, David didn't apologize. He never did. He simply asked, "What's for dinner?" As if nothing had happened. Monica served quietly, numb but used to it. After everyone slept, she sat on the floor beside her bed, whispering to herself, "I just want peace. Not love. Not escape. Just quiet." The next morning, she packed her kids' lunches, tied her hair back, and looked at herself in the mirror. "One day," she said softly, "one day, I'll be free." Ethan sat alone after Monica left that day. The coffee had gone cold. For the first time, he didn't feel excited or wanted. He felt sad. He thought of the others before her, Sarah, Melissa, Dana. Different faces, same tired eyes. They all smiled like people pretending they weren't breaking. "Sometimes I feel invisible," one had said. Another whispered, "He hasn't touched me in months." Ethan remembered every confession, every tremor in their voices. Ethan realized he wasn't saving anyone. He was just a mirror, reflecting the warmth they were starving for. And maybe he too was lonely in his own way. There had been nights filled with whispers and stolen glances, but in the morning, only silence. No messages, no promises, just guilt. He started asking himself questions. Why me? Why them? Why does this keep happening? For the first time, he wanted answers more than company. One woman, a math professor, had told him, "I solve equations all day, but I can't solve my marriage." Her voice cracked as she said it. He had laughed softly then, but now, the words haunted him. Each woman carried her pain like a secret tattoo, unseen, but always there. Ethan could feel their stories heavy on his chest. He didn't feel proud anymore. He felt protective, even ashamed. For the first time, he understood. This wasn't about sin or lust. It was about starvation. Emotional starvation. That night, Ethan lay awake replaying every story. What if they'd just been loved right? He whispered into the dark. Would they have ever found me? He promised that if he ever married, he'd never let his partner feel that unseen. Never let silence replace warmth. Never let love turn into duty. Love, he realized, wasn't about grand gestures or stolen moments. It was about presence, showing up, listening, seeing someone's soul. That's all those women had wanted. From the outside, Claire had everything. A beautiful house, 2 kids, a husband who provided well. Neighbors often said, "You're so lucky." She smiled and said, "I know." But inside, she felt invisible. Dinner was quiet, every evening the same. Her husband scrolled through his phone, nodding without hearing her words. The children giggled in another room, and she sat there, feeling more alone than ever. She looked in the mirror that night and barely recognized herself. "When did I stop shining?" she whispered. The woman staring back looked tired, not from age, but from being unseen. It had been months since her husband touched her. Not out of cruelty, just indifference. They shared a bed, but not closeness. He turned away at night. She turned into the pillow and cried silently. At work, a new coworker complimented her dress. "That color suits you," he said simply. It was nothing, yet it was everything. She blushed for the first time in years. Claire didn't want romance. She wanted to matter. She wanted someone to notice the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her kids, her dreams, her old favorite songs. But guilt came fast. "I shouldn't feel this," she thought, clutching her chest. That night, she overcompensated, cooked her husband's favorite meal, laughed too loudly, tried too hard. He barely looked up. It started with messages. Harmless, she told herself. "How was your day?" "Rough," she'd reply. They shared thoughts, not bodies. But emotionally, she had already crossed a line. One evening, she whispered to her coworker, "I'm not happy." He didn't say anything, he just looked at her with understanding. That look broke her more than any word could. That night, she lay awake again. "I'm a terrible person," she thought. But another voice whispered, "You're just lonely." The war inside her heart raged quietly until dawn. The next day, her husband brushed past her on his way out. No kiss. No eye contact. Just a door shutting behind him. She stood there, coffee in hand, realizing how empty her home truly felt. Claire didn't cheat for thrill or revenge. She simply reached for warmth in a place where love had long turned cold. It wasn't lust, it was survival. And that's what Ethan finally understood. The morning light poured through the window, soft and golden. Ethan sat by his desk, sipping black coffee, staring at old photographs, faces from another life. Each photograph wasn't of the women themselves, but of moments, cafes, park benches, sunsets. He remembered their laughter, their trembling hands, the way they said, "I just want to feel something again." He used to think they wanted him. Now, he understood, they wanted the version of themselves that still felt alive. He was never the story, he was just a chapter. Some nights, their voices echoed in his head. "You make me feel safe," one had said. Safe, that word hurt the most. He wondered if he ever truly understood what safety meant. In his 20s, he wore confidence like armor. Every compliment, every secret shared by a married woman, fed his ego. Now he saw it for what it was, insecurity wearing charm. Sometimes, he thought of writing to them, not to reopen doors but to say, "I'm sorry I didn't understand your pain sooner." But he never did. Some ghosts are better left resting. Looking in the mirror, he saw fine lines around his eyes, not from age alone, but from the weight of stories he carried. "You were part of their escape," he whispered, "not their healing." He had thought connection was beautiful, but now he saw how fragile it really was, how one moment of comfort could destroy years of trust. Ironically, Ethan now understood the loneliness those women spoke of, not from neglect, but from reflection. Regret was its own kind of isolation. He wasn't proud of his past, but he wasn't running from it anymore. Those stories had changed him, made him softer, more aware, more honest with himself. He realized love wasn't about filling your emptiness with another person. It was about learning to listen, to nurture, to stay, even when life grows silent. Ethan looked at his wife, now laughing in the kitchen. He smiled softly. He had made peace with the past, not by forgetting it, but by learning from it. Ethan woke before sunrise. His wife, Maya, still slept beside him. For a moment, he just watched her, breathing softly, her hand resting near his. He smiled. Years ago, he never would have noticed something so simple. He whispered, "I love you," not as a habit, but as truth. Every morning he said it, because he'd learned that love fades when unspoken. In the kitchen, he brewed her favorite coffee, 2 sugars, no cream. It was small, but it mattered. He knew now that love wasn't about grand gestures. It lived in little things repeated daily. As he packed for work, he glanced at the old photo on his desk, himself in his 20s, grinning foolishly. "You caused a lot of pain," he murmured. "But you also taught me who not to be." That night, Maya came home tired. "Work was awful," she sighed. Ethan didn't fix it. He just listened. Really listened. Sometimes, silence was the best form of care. When he made mistakes, he owned them. "I was wrong," he'd say without excuses. He'd learned that pride was the silent killer of connection. Ethan worked out, not for vanity but for respect. He remembered the women who said their husbands stopped trying. He refused to let comfort become neglect. On weekends, they danced in the living room, no music needed. They laughed like teenagers, imperfect but together. Ethan knew laughter was glue. He never took it for granted. When they fought, he didn't raise his voice. He'd seen what shouting did to marriages. Now he paused, breathed, and said, "Let's fix this, not each other." Ethan read bedtime stories to their son every night. Love your mom, he whispered after turning off the lights. That's how you become a good man. Every day before bed, he thanked her. For what? Maya always asked, smiling. For staying, he'd reply. Gratitude, he learned, was love's daily oxygen. Years later, Ethan stood on the porch watching the sunset with Maya. You know, he said softly, I used to think love was something you find. Turns out it's something you build, one day at a time. Ethan sat at a quiet cafe, watching couples walk by, some laughing, others not speaking. He realized most affairs didn't begin in bedrooms, they began in silence. It starts small, a compliment never given, a touch never offered, a question left unanswered. Day by day, love dries up quietly, until one heart starts looking elsewhere for water. Affairs feel like freedom at first, laughter, attention, butterflies. But that rush is just loneliness wearing perfume. It doesn't heal, it only hides the wound for a while. Ethan once believed the cheater was always wrong. But now he knew, it takes two to let love starve. Affairs are wrong, yes, but so is neglect. So is silence. So is pride. Most people don't cheat for new love, they cheat for old feelings. They want to feel desired again, wanted again, seen again. That's the truth no one admits. Familiarity can turn lovers into strangers. When effort dies, attraction follows. When conversation stops, connection fades. Comfort without care is just quiet decay. We're just friends. It doesn't mean anything. Those are the lies that build bridges to betrayal. Every emotional secret shared outside the marriage plants a fracture inside it. It's rarely planned. One moment of weakness, one shared tear, one comforting touch, and suddenly, a line is crossed that can never be erased. Affairs leave destruction, not just for the betrayed, but for the betrayer too. Guilt becomes a ghost that follows you, even into happiness. Ethan learned that saving a marriage doesn't begin with blame, it begins with honesty. Are you happy? Is the scariest question, but the only one that saves love before it's too late. Ethan tells his friends now, cheating doesn't start with someone new. It starts when you stop trying with the one you already have. The truth hits harder than judgment ever could. In the end, Ethan writes it down. Affairs don't destroy marriages, neglect does. Silence does. The slow forgetting of each other does. He closes the notebook, exhales, and smiles sadly. Ethan sat by the window, watching the sunrise paint gold across the kitchen walls. For once, the world was still, and his heart wasn't heavy, just full of understanding. He opened his old leather notebook, the same one filled with stories of love, pain, and choices. But this time, he didn't write for himself. He wrote for everyone. He wrote, cheating doesn't happen to bad people. It happens to lonely people, good wives, decent husbands, tired hearts, forgotten souls. Ethan's pen didn't stop. Love isn't something you find and keep. It's something you choose, every day, even when you don't feel like it. He remembered every woman who told him, he doesn't hear me anymore. And now, he wrote, listen, not to reply, but to understand. You'll save a marriage with your ears before your hands ever can. He imagined life as a camera. It captures what you focus on. If you focus only on flaws, you'll forget the beauty beside you. Ethan wrote, the enemy isn't another man or woman. The enemy is distance, pride, and the false belief that love maintains itself. He didn't name names, but his words carried quiet apologies to 12 faces from the past. I'm sorry for being the escape instead of the answer. His tone softened. Go home. Hug them. Tell them you love them. Do it today. Do it again tomorrow. You don't know when the last time might be. Ethan closed the notebook, looked into the mirror, and said aloud, be the person you'd want to come home to. He realized this message wasn't just for married couples. It was for everyone. For friends who stopped calling. For families who stopped forgiving. For anyone who forgot how to care. Ethan's voiceover closed the message. Love isn't about never failing. It's about always returning. Affairs happen when hearts drift, but healing begins when someone chooses to stay. He smiled softly, whispering, "Tell them you love them." Ethan sat alone in his study, an old photograph trembling in his hands, a woman laughing, sunlight on her hair. The picture had yellowed, but her smile still felt alive. He remembered the sound of two people who stopped trying, the quiet clinking of dishes, the sigh before sleep, the unspoken goodnight. That's how love fades. Not with shouting, but silence. Ethan whispered, "What if I had listened sooner?" The question echoed through years of choices, through every heart he once broke and every one he'd helped heal. Time, he realized, doesn't erase pain. It just teaches you how to carry it better. And the people who loved you once still live in the lessons they left behind. He smiled faintly, remembering arguments, flaws, laughter between tears. Maybe love isn't perfect, he thought. Maybe it's beautiful because it survives imperfection. Ethan wrote in his journal, "Love fades when we stop paying attention, but it grows again when we choose to notice." He underlined the word choose. He watched a candle burn low on his desk. The flame danced softly, fragile but determined. That's marriage, he thought. It flickers, but it's still light. He remembered every confession, every tear, every whispered, "I just wanted to feel loved." Those voices shaped him, turned guilt into empathy, mistakes into meaning. Now, every morning, he tells his wife, "I love you." Not out of habit, but remembrance, because he knows what happens when those words stop. He wrote one last line in his notebook. The fate of love isn't the end. It's a warning, a whisper telling you to fight for it before it's gone. Ethan placed the photograph back into the drawer, smiled softly, and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me." He didn't need to look back anymore. He stepped outside as evening fell. The sky was fading into gold and purple. He whispered, "Love doesn't end when people leave. It ends when we stop showing up." And with that, he walked into the sunset, a man at peace. Thank you for watching till the end. Your love and support mean everything to us. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss any of our new stories and updates. And if you enjoyed this journey, comment below and let us know. Your feedback inspires our next big story.